and
for coming. It's a nice group, nice crowd. I know that you must have been reading about this in the Pointer or somewhere because you're here. But I'll remind you that our presentation tonight is a film called The Face of Lincoln, and our new resident Dick Harber made the film back when he was a student at USC Film School.
Not quite a student. I graduated.
He graduated. I keep saying that you were a student.
It's all right.
Anyway,
You're always a student.
he became a professor at USC Film School for 35 years, and I wish I knew about all the students that he helped. Some of them are pretty famous, so they appreciate you. And he's going to tell you about the film and then answer some questions afterward if you have some. All right? And the film, he's going to tell you about the Academy Award.
All right.
Where's the mic?
He has a microphone even though I
stole it. Can you hear me? Yes. That's all that counts. Okay. I want to say first, I'm not an authority on Lincoln. I know a lot about making movies, but I happen to make a movie about Lincoln. So, don't ask me too many questions about Lincoln. I'll have to refer them to my friend Gil over here. He's the Lincoln expert, and that's the way it goes. I got to SC by a kind of a roundabout way, but like most people there after World War II, you got out of the Army or whatever you were in, and then what are you going to do? Well, you got to get a job. Okay? Where do you get a job? There weren't any jobs, and you had to look around. But they needed a lot of teachers. So that's where you go. You go to a teacher training school and get a credential and a degree, and you start teaching. So I went to the University of Redlands, got my BA there, and Redlands being a Baptist university, you have to go to chapel every other week. Yeah, I mean, you got to go. If you don't go, you don't graduate. That's it, period. So one of the programs they had at the University of Redlands was this gentleman from USC doing this sculpture on the stage. And I looked at that as a student, and I thought, boy, that'd make a good movie. I don't know, why somebody doesn't do that. And I had no idea that I'd be the guy winding up to do it. But anyway, I got a credential. I taught 7th grade. Now, 7th grade is the pits. They're squirrely. The hormones are beginning to run around, and everything is nuts. So I said to myself, there's got to be a better way to make a living than this. This doesn't work. And I was interested in movies and audiovisual stuff. Audiovisual was really big after the war. It's kind of like the internet now, because they used it in training in the Army and Navy, and they thought it would be a good thing to have this in the school systems, have a movie projector in the school and do that. Okay, fine. So I got involved in that. And one of the conventions of the California Audiovisual Society was held in San Diego, and I went down there to see what was going on, and the guest speakers were the faculty from USC Cinema Department. And that's how I got involved with them. And so they said, why don't you come down and we'll show you how to make movies, and we'll do this and we'll do that. So I said, okay, I still had 2 years left on the GI Bill, and I went, and that night I was in class. I was hooked. That was it. I was there. After I finished my degree there, they said, we're starting a faculty-student production unit to make films for the university and other clients. Okay. And they wanted me to be part of it. So they hired me. So I went to work at USC In 1953, for $2,700, $3,000 a year. That was what they paid beginning lecturers in 1953. And what do they get now? And, we got $3,000 a year, and they want minimum wage now at, well, forget it. Okay. So here comes this fellow. They said, we're going to make a film on this Lincoln. And I said, Lincoln? I know, I've seen that. Well, it was like being in hog heaven. I knew what was going to happen, and nobody else had seen what he did that was on the crew. All they knew was that it was good, and we had to make this movie. So we built a little set. We got him in there. We shot for a week, and he has to be done in order. You can't do one scene here and one scene over there. You got to do it as it progresses along, because he's doing the sculpture as he works and building his face. So it has to be shot in real time. Well, we shot for a week. We shot for 5 days, and we finished. And we looked at the stuff, and he was really camera shy on the first day. So we went back that next week and reshot the first day all over again. And it worked all right. So anyway, let's take a look at the film, and then if you have questions about the film, I'll be happy to try to answer them. If you have questions about Lincoln, I'm going to defer you over. Now, one more thing. Some of you have noticed this life mask. This is a real life mask from Lincoln's face. He will explain how they did this in the movie. Not really how, but who did it. And it's a really very, very close likeness of Lincoln. Okay? And
Can you hold that up really high so people can see it?
well, you can come up afterwards. Yeah. You know how they made these? They would put the clay on the person's face. They'd shove a couple of straws up their nose so they could breathe. And then they put the clay on their face and then let it set. Then they would peel it off. And when it was dry, I don't know, did they fire him at that time? I don't think they did.
Back then?
I don't think so. But anyway, when it was dry, they could coat the inside and put clay inside of it and make one of these from that imprint that they had from the actual face. And there are several of these famous people who had this done. They did every president. I don't know if they still do them or not. I think they do. But anyway, can we run it? Yes. We'll see. As I said, it took a week to shoot this, and then we went back and redid the first day on the next week. The first version that I edited in this was about 35 minutes long. It was 3 reels, a little bit over 3 reels in the theater film. And we took it back east to the University Film Producers Association meeting in the summer of '54 and ran it. And everybody applauded and stood up. They don't ever do that for their own films. And so they said, you got to get this in the Academy Awards, but it's too long. And they went, well, okay. So they suggested, and it was a good suggestion, take 10 or 12 minutes out of it and make it 20 minutes long, which was my job. So we had a hard time trying to figure out what to take out and not lose the content of the film and figure out what it was really all about. Early on in the film, he spent a lot of time talking about his early life and the women that he was friends with. And so we had to really be careful and trim that down to the bare necessity of the woman he finally married and keep it as though it was flowing normally. But that's where we got most of the information out of the film so that we could get it down to 20 minutes. And it was nominated, and we thought, wow, it did get nominated. And then it won, and nobody would believe it, particularly nobody at the university. Of course, the university thought, oh, this is very good. Yeah, we like that. Where's the Oscar? You think we got to keep it? No, it's in the president's office. Anyway, do you have any questions about it, or anything you'd like to ask?
Does that sculpture still exist?
No. The question was, does that sculpture still exist? This is an interesting question because he was on a speaking circuit, and he would go to different clubs and organizations and do this. And he would do it once or twice a week. And he said, you know, I'm getting older, and he said, for me to lug around a 65-pound ball of clay and then set it up on the table and do this, you know, 2 or 3 a week or 2 or 3 times a month is a little bit much. So that's one of the reasons we made the film. But to answer his question, this was not the kind of clay that you could really keep and preserve. It's modeling clay, and it doesn't hold, you know, too long. So when he was done with it, he would take it all apart and, you know, put the clay back in the keg and put it on the and take it out. And he went to the Pasadena Women's Club one time. This is how the story goes. And these people were very, very tenacious, and they hounded him. And this one lady said, I've got to have that. I just want that. I've got to have that. Well, if you know anything, if you worked in clay, you know, you take a piece of wire and cut the clay in blocks and cut it off. And as she was talking and saying she had to have it, he took the wire out and went just like that and cut the face right off. It fell on the floor. He said, it's not for sale. So he did it fresh every time and never kept one.
Wow. Wow.
And what we did, we actually had two heads, and he did 2 heads at the same time, and we interchanged them. He would do work on one day, and then we would finish that part of the script or part of the show, and he would take the other one and build it up the same way. So that then he would let that one that he worked on, let's say on Tuesday, he'd let that sit on Wednesday, and we used the other one on Wednesday and alternated them back and forth.
Wow.
And it was a little bit tricky trying to figure out which was which. But
Why did he do that? Why did he do
I
that?
don't really know. He just wanted the clay to set a little bit, to set up. I don't know. When he would work that in a presentation, he just had one head and he just went right through it.
Did you work on a picture?
No, he worked from memory. Yes.
Yeah, with the dialogue, you just did it spontaneously.
Well, no, he was a Lincoln expert.
Oh, of course.
And he had memorized his speech down to the last word. And every time he did it, it was the same thing. And so he knew exactly where he was going. He had to put this piece of clay on when he was saying that passage and so forth. So he knew where it was. There was no guessing about it. He was sharp. He really did a beautiful job. Yes, ma'am.
And he didn't need any model? He just did it all out of his memory.
Well, he had, Brady took some photographs of Lincoln, and he had those, but he didn't need them, because he had done this so many times. He just didn't need it. Yes.
When you accepted the Academy Award, was Merrill there? Did
Uh,
he come and be part of the celebration?
Well, I didn't get to go because I wasn't invited. I mean, oh, that's an interesting question. She asked who went to the Academy Award ceremony. Well, the Academy, you know, it's crazy. The Academy has to have a person to give the award to, okay? Now, this was made theoretically by the university. Okay, who goes to pick up the award? So that's why we had to redo the titles and put a guy's name up there as producer, Bill Bloom. He was the head of production, the production department at the time, and it was his idea to do this, so okay, fine. But the sculptor, Merrill Gage, got to go pick up the Oscar.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's
No,
nice.
we wouldn't, you know, he had to do that.
That was nice.
Sure, it was great. And, you know, it was a very pleasant thing to do. It was difficult. I had a lot of conflict with the sculptor in the beginning because you know, one of the things that makes a film like this work is the lighting. And I had seen this before, and I thought, boy, that's going to be a real bitch to light, you know, because you can't just throw a bunch of lights up and say that. You have to have some modeling and some shadows and all of this. In fact, I had it lit the way I liked it, the way I wanted it, and he would get behind it. Let's say the head is here, and he's working on it. He would go around on the back side and say, I like this light. This is the kind of light I want. Well, those are all the backlights that were up on the set, and they were just pouring down. But what he wanted was more of a flat light so he could see inside the cracks and crevices. Well, then after we got our second day of Russia's back, and he looked at him, he said, I see what you're trying to do. And the shadow, see, it's an all gray subject. He was in a white robe, a thing, and the background was gray, the clay was gray, the stand was black. Well, you know, it's black and white. So you have to add the shadow detail. The shadow has to work for you, yes.
It just dawned on me that although you were working in black and white at the time because that was the genre, this would not work nearly as well had it been shot in color.
Oh, no, it would have been a disaster.
It wouldn't have been good.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Great illustration of how we're black and white.
Right, thank you.
What was your career after this was finished?
Well, I stayed at the university for, I retired in 1990. So I was there 35 years. The idea was to make educational films for the university and for other clients who could not afford to have an industrial or one of the studio filmmakers make films for them. For example, there was an outfit starting up called National Educational Television, which later it became PBS, as you now know it. Okay, but National Educational Television at that time had no product. So they came to us and they said, you've got a lot of talent in your university, and they cited this, and they said, can you get him to do a series on sculpturing? And we said, well, we'll try. So we talked to him, and he said, well, yeah, I can do that. So we did a series of 12 films with him, 12 half-hour shows for the TV. Actually, we did 13. There's 13 weeks in the season. So, and we shot him all in his studio. His studio was a little bigger than this room. I mean, it was really big. And he had every kind of sculpture you could possibly think of. From clay to wood to, marble, everything. And so each episode goes through a different kind of sculpturing. And it's a very good series. And that also was in black and white. We did another series with Dr. Frank Baxter on the written word and how the printing press was evolved. We did, I don't know how many series for, and each series we did had 13 shows in 13 weeks, because that's a season. And so we kept going with that. But we made films for other government agencies. We did one for NASA, where we went over to Hawaii and up to the crater up there on the top. I think it's Haleakala. It was called Great as the House of the Sun, and there was a scientist who was doing research on the afterglow of sunset and how what the atmosphere was like and what happened. And I couldn't explain it to you now, but that was kind of technical stuff. But mostly for government agencies, for city organizations, and for nonprofit groups that couldn't afford to have a film made by professionals. The big industrial filmmaker was in Chicago. It was a place called Wilding Studios, and they made films for General Motors and Greyhound Bus and all those things, big travel films. And they had humongous budgets, and we were down there working for peanuts. But we did it, and we made some pretty good films. Any other questions?
What,
Yeah.
No, you go.
so I'm just curious, what eventually happened to him, the sculpture?
Well, he's passed away now, but he
A long time ago.
a long time ago. But he was quite a guy.
Well,
He was a farm boy from Kansas. He grew up on a farm and had enough of farming and decided to take up sculpturing. And he was the head sculptor, taught sculpting at USC, and then had his own private collection and augmented his salary that way. Yes.
George Lucas was one of your students, right?
Well, George Lucas wasn't one of my students, but I was on the admissions committee that admitted him.
I see.
And I taught the beginning nuts and bolts class. This is the camera, this is the and all that, and how it works, and mechanical stuff. Well, he knew all that stuff. He knew all that stuff when he got there. But so I gave him the final exam, and he aced it. He passed it right in, no problem at all. And afterwards, I said, George, why don't you come in here and teach this class? And then I can go do something else. And he said, no. He said, I got to get a degree because I got a lot of movies I want to make. He was a nice guy. He was very, very nice. Very nice guy. We had some others that were pretty good. Bob Zemeckis, who did Back to the Future 1 and 2, Forrest Gump. And he was really a nutcase, but he was a good student. He was a wild kid. I'm going to make movies. I'm going to be big. Okay, calm down. But he turned out pretty good. Randall Kleiser was another student of ours. For you Californians and people on the West Coast, if you remember billboards with the name on Foster Kleiser, well, that was the Kleiser family, and he was the son of the Kleisers, and he wanted to get a degree in film, which he did. And then he went out to work for, I guess it was Universal, I don't know. And they were starting up a show with Robert Young called, what was the doctor show he did? Marcus Welby, MD, right. And, it was a new show, and it was not much money and all that. And they said, okay, kid, show us your stuff. Direct a couple of these. And he did a pretty fair job, and they said, okay. And they looked at the money, and of course, he was just beginning, so they weren't paying him a whole lot of money. So that they liked that part. And so he kept the job, and he did the Marcus Goldie series. Every show, he brought in 1, ahead of schedule, 2, under budget. They loved him. If you don't think money talks in the movie business, you're wrong. And that's all there is. That's it. And so he was given an opportunity to direct a film called Grease. Remember Grease?
Yeah.
He never made another film because he's still redoing Grease. He's still there, and Grease is still going strong, and he is the head of it. Wow. So he did all right. Any other questions? Yes?
You told me a little story about Steven Spielberg.
Oh, Steven Spielberg. She wants to know about Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg was a good friend of George Lucas. All he wanted to do was make movies. And he had made movies, 8mm movies, since he got out of the cradle. I mean, he had just, that's all he wanted to do was make movies. And so George says, you gotta come to SC, you gotta come and go to school. Okay, so he applied. The university wouldn't admit him. His grades were so poor, his GPA, grade point average, was way down in the water. It was below sea level. And it really was bad. And George Lucas, I remember he said the head of the department, they had an argument right out in front of my office. He said, you gotta let this kid in, you gotta let him in, he's gonna be big, and you know, Bernie Cantor was head of the department at that time, and he said, George, he says, I can't. If I were to let him in, the university would fire me because his grade point average and everything else is non-existent. He doesn't want to do anything except make movies. And George says, ain't that what it's all about? Anyway, he didn't get to go. He went to Cal State Long Beach. Because Francis Ford Coppola's brother was head of the English department there. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't need to say anymore. Any other questions?